Hello, everyone, and welcome to the eWorks webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're diving into the top 5 mistakes to avoid for an effective LMS operations. And the session will run for about 40 to 45 minutes. So again, welcome. I am Jel Lingbawan. I'm the Client Service Delivery Officer at eWorks. I've been with VetaSys for nearly 8 years, mainly in the frontline management, focusing on supporting clients and the business in meeting their requirements. And apologies for Mark, due to unforeseen circumstance, he's not able to join us today. But the good news is we've got 2 experts here. We've got Ellen from RANZCO. Hi, Ellen. And we've got Pauline from the Skills for the Future to talk about our topic on the 5 biggest mistakes to avoid for effective LMS operations. So if you could also please let us know, share to us why you're here. Please feel free to pop them up on the chat box. So, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to pop them up on the chat box, ask them away with your email address. We'll look into responding to them after the webinar if we miss anything during the presentation. So I'll probably make a start with a few thoughts on our topic today. I know most of you in here can probably give hundreds of mistakes to avoid, but we will settle for with 5 for now. And the first one is not putting your learners first. Of course, learners are important. I can probably say that they are the heart of an LMS ecosystem, figuratively speaking. Hence why we need to know and understand the learner's journey, their goals and their objectives. If they're, taking the course, is it for compliance or non-compliance purposes? Are they in an RTO or in a TAFE institution? Are they going to gain a certificate or, let's say, a badge after completing the learning? Or will it be a part of their continuous professional development? Let's say for RANZCO, I'll give this as an example. They have contracted with eWorks because they needed a platform to host their CPD, their continuous professional development, and was looking for a dynamic learning management system where integrations to their different systems and CRM could be possibly done. So in short, failing to put your learners first can undermine the effectiveness of the entire LMS operations. Second mistake is not adhering to budget. We could say that setting up and operating and running LMS could already be costly. So once you understand and adhere to the needs of the learners, when I say that is the basics, you can then start to work out additional extras. Like, for example, Sandbox, which can be used as a testing site, or do you need additional plugins or any additional advanced reporting and analytics tools such as IntelliBoard? Well, don't get me wrong, this could be nice to have extras. Actually, they can be recommended options, but you should always be realistic on your budget, because it can affect the long-term sustainability and viability of your LMS. So yeah, that's the second one. The third mistake is not enough research. Even before you go down to the LMS journey, I believe that it's vital to conduct a lot of research in terms to making informed decisions that align with the organizational goals and enhance the effectiveness of your LMS. here, the system design, the architecture, security, existing tools, flexibility of the LMS will come into play. So we could probably ask the questions, is the LMS have these factors and do they satisfy your learning requirements? And one more thing is that you should be able to log in into a sandpit where you can play around, like for example, for eWorks, we have a demo site that we give to clients to try out and experience the look and feel of the LMS that we're serving them. And the fourth one is not choosing the right vendor. This might be a controversial topic, but it's true that it's a great deal to have a reliable partner, to be effective in running your LMS. We could ask the questions whether have they established an open and transparent communication in terms of probably costing, updates and upgrades of the system. Do they have reliable technical support, maybe friendly staff? And are they introducing new innovations to support the present and future needs of your learners and to the whole organization? So yeah, fifth biggest mistake is not looking into the future. You should be able to visualize, have the vision of what does your LMS look like in the future, anticipating the future growth in the number of users, change in courses, technological advancement now that the AI, open AI is now emerging, and even regulatory requirements is also is needed. So we can ask, does your LMS have the capability to adapt to your future learning needs? So yeah, that's it from my end. And moving on, I'm really pleased to introduce our first guest speaker. She's the Senior Manager, Curriculum and Learning Design at RANZCO. She is an experienced educational leader, academic developer, and instructional designer who has over 15 years in higher education in the private sector and more recently in the medical education sector. Welcome, Ellen.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here today. First of all, I want you just to understand a little bit about RANZCO. It's a medical college. We look after the training, examination and professional development of ophthalmologists across Australia and New Zealand. So we have about 1,200 fellows, 200 trainees who are undergoing the training program across 5 years. And the college also looks after the continuing professional development program for the fellows. So we have a staff of about 30 people, and it's a very small organisation. With our LMS, it plays an important role for our vocational training program because we are a binational college, and it really only supplements the hospital-based training which occurs full-time. Importantly, it unites our learning culture, brings our assessment and learning experiences together, fostering the identity of the community of practice in the field of training for ophthalmology. The training program has a structured high-level curriculum and a range of curriculum standards and subjects, and strives for a programmatic assessment approach. So this means that we're consciously moving away from content-driven learning and a primary focus on exams as assessments to valuing all assessments as learning experiences and thinking in terms of high stakes and low stakes assessments and collecting a range of data on trainees for progression decisions. This means that all the online courses or tasks that trainees or registrars do are now really tracked on our LMS and given much more emphasis. However, the platform also serves our continuing professional development program and other membership services which have different demands. Learners are more autonomous, things are more flexible. sometimes there are just they just need access to information. So we share across teams a lot of content and sites, and we have a lot of legacy sites that haven't been updated for a long time. And so the LMS is used for a wide variety of needs. Our fellows don't directly teach on the sites yet, and we sort of serve as the intermediaries for the fellows, and this all affects us operationally. We collaborated with eWorks mid last year to update our LMS platform. We had 2 old LMS systems, one that we were delivering our examinations through. It's fairly important that security is really high on this platform, as the medical exams are very high stakes. We also wanted to move to sort of a cloud-based system, and we wanted a lot more support and partnership around the LMS platform. We needed help with the functionality of the platform, EdTech decisions, and also just with the security around the system, and just a better provider all around, which we found eWorks definitely to be. So our number one mistake, I guess, was with our operations across time has been to underestimate what is really needed for a healthy site and ensuring sustainability of the quality of the site. We haven't really acknowledged the resourcing that's needed to keep a system well. And then this has flow-on effects. So as we're staff of 30 and people operate across roles a lot, people can be a bit stretched thin, and boundaries around roles and things can be not good. So control of the site is widely dispersed, and this causes a lot of problems. For example, not having centralised or dedicated LMS administration results in our core sites having something like 1,800 users in them, most of them inactive. And because we don't roll over sites by term or year, the quality and usability and learning value of some sites is quite questionable because there's not the regular update and fit for purpose checks that should happen. We also sort of with a we haven't had regular updates and patches and testing, and so that's going to be very important going forward with our exam system being integrated. Also, because of this widely dispersed control, it causes tensions in staff about role responsibilities and the quality of the sites and troubleshooting sites. So, for example, the learning designers get unhappy as they are confused with administrators, and this all gets in the way. So we're really focusing on how can we manage our content better, how do we manage our users better, how can we maintain high security around assessment, and acknowledging the resourcing that's really needed for that, and trying to develop systematic approaches to quality and ownership, and also to allow time for continuous improvement and feedback mechanisms to actually occur. So this wide dispersion of control and lack of administrative support for the LMS has resulted in a lack of documentation. So across time, we're slowly starting to build a proper LMS policy and operational manual. We've developed RANZCO learning design standards so that people can have at least minimum standards for the layout and usability of sites. We really need to allow more time for troubleshooting and testing documentation so that we can move beyond just band-aiding problems on the sites and actually fix them on a business level and prevent them happening again. People need templates to work with. So we're slowly building up this documentation so that this we can work better across the business and across education units to allow this to happen better. I think another challenge or mistake that we've made is not having quite enough of a handle on integrations with other key systems. So we have a separate CRM, and it's relatively new, and all staff, including our IT staff, have variable knowledge and expertise of the system. We're really working it out as we go, and this is impacts on course enrolments and access to the sites, and on course site setup. And so when there's troubles in our CRM, that also has a flow-on effect to the LMS. It also impacts on reporting data properly back into the CRM as well. So it can be frustrating as well, because there'll be different providers that we're working with who look after the systems, and changes can take a long time. And there might be gaps in understanding about what we're really trying to achieve with, say, integrating grades back into the CRM, or setting up things that relate to the LMS. I think this is something that is difficult, has been difficult, that there's been a lack of understanding about learning design at its most basic level, and confusing it with administration support. And I guess this comes back to being clear about roles and definitions, and having the right sort of infrastructure to support your LMS. One of our biggest mistakes has sort of been around this area. So it causes stress for program coordinators who don't necessarily have the right educational technology experience, and they're expected to do more than they can manage or are trained for in the system. Learning designers get annoyed because they're asked to put content up and do administration on sites that they wouldn't normally do. And it's probably not the best use of their time and expertise. Can lead to tension amongst staff and poor working relationships. So it can also lead to poor design and usability of the site. So it's a pretty important one to understand that we need these different roles in order for the system to function effectively. This relates to my last point. You need really purposeful leadership and strategic direction for learning management systems to be really effective. It's more than an IT platform, and there needs to be a basic understanding of this across all staff roles. It'll affect how you choose images for the site. It'll affect how you organise course materials. It'll affect the learning and teaching you approach, or the tools that you use on the system. So I think it's a fairly well-worn model now, but the TPAC model was always interesting to me, because it highlighted how, if we wanted to be effective with our teaching through technology, we had to understand how these things intersect. And I think this also applies to the learning system as a whole, because without some knowledge of all these elements by staff at all levels, and some understanding of the complex interaction between them, you can fall into it being just seen as an IT platform, and that can affect sort of how you operate the system. So I think this is something that we're building. We're getting depth in the organisation around understanding of these things, and that's really making an impact. And it also motivates staff more, because they understand why we're doing certain things, or choosing certain structures on the platform as well. So what we're striving for is to have good hygiene in the system, to establish standards that all staff can understand and operate to have the right skills and roles, and make that transparent across the board, to set up systems for documentation, and also current documentation that guides the way we use the site, and also to set up a culture of continuous improvement to our learning management site, so that it doesn't just become a static object, but that we have enough time to develop it and improve it. So thanks for having me here today. I hope it's been interesting and you found it helpful, and thanks again.
Thanks so much, Ellen, for sharing those insights. And I'm also delighted to introduce our next guest speaker. She's the Managing Director for the Skills for the Future. Welcome, Pauline.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'd just like to give a hats off to Ellen and for Janelle for persisting through that, and for you as an audience doing the same thing. And I think it's going to highlight some of the things that I'll talk about today. We can't always assume that the technology is always going to work. And so having our backups are always critical. So thanks, ladies. I'm going to take a slightly different tack, and the tack that I'm going to take is talking about not just the operational, but the actual setup of an LMS, and this can be retroactively applied. And so, a bit in my background, the first time I experienced the beast that is known as an LMS was back in 1998 at Box Hill Institute, where a group of amazing people set up something called the Distributed Learning System, and it was all done in Cold Fusion. And I think it was cutting edge, absolutely amazing. But as time worked on, having your own system that you had to administer and manage within a large organisation, the whole started to, show. So while I was at Box Hill, we moved to the very first, or very early instance of Moodle, which was 2.0. But what I learned from that instance was a whole range of things, and I thought I'd share some of those learnings with you today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think the 5 key things, and then I'll do some operational ones for you. So I think when you first set up a learning management system, we've set up 5 in the last 4 years. My company works in transformation projects. We don't just set up learning management systems or adapt them. We also do workforce development, set up new products, new systems, and innovation. And what we've found, and that's why we do a lot of work with eWorks, is that they have a really strong system that has got customization abilities and great customer service. But what we do is we spend a lot of time working out of the LMS before we do anything. And we make sure that we do a whole lot of work around system architecture, really importantly, the pedagogical approach within the learning architecture. We make sure we really understand what the design brief is to reflect on that learning model. Then we also look at the product design and development that needs to achieve out of that. And a lot of that, there's a bit of failure on that. And I think Ellen made some really good points about quality and consistency around what is your product. And then I think there's a really big piece that we often fail to understand the data architecture and the learner analytics and the learning analytics we want to get out of that system. So let's talk a little bit about that, and feel free to ask questions along the way. So I'm going to talk a whole lot about, I'm a big believer that 80% of the hard work needs to be done before you even touch a system. It's that planning, that consistency, the collaboration and the co-design that actually makes something like a good learning management system relatively simple to administer once you've got all your ducks in a row. But we all know along the journey, we all inherit things that perhaps didn't have this lovely approach, but let's have a look at it. So in terms of system architecture, it's really critical to understand, as Ellen said, around what are those integrations that need to occur. I've worked on some pretty big Moodle integrations where, for example, there was 123 different colleges. What had been failed to understand is this large organisation was issuing as their multiple authentication tool an email address that none of the students used. As a result, it then became a moot point for authentication. So we had to move to multi-factor authentication. But what were the other things? Things like Tableau and BI and timetabling, attendance, and the list goes on. You need to map that out so you're really clear not on what your TESC or your ASCA requirements are, but also what the existing architecture is within the business. Ellen's alluded to this, but really critical in the early days, all learning management systems were seen as a little adjunct in any large organisation or an RTO. It was just something that learning and teaching team did on the side. Very rarely was there scoping around what staff is required, what ongoing resources required, what the updating schedule should be. Was there a disaster recovery plan? Was there a business continuity plan? And a number of organisations, both small and large, learnt that mistake the hard way when their systems crashed and they didn't have an appropriate backup or restoration processes. Think it through with your IT department or your IT individual team member. This needs to be discussed. You need more than one server. We've just set one up in the last 4 weeks. We've got a sandbox, a development server and a production server. And that is for a small organisation that is never going to teach. But the investment, and eWorks has been great in us being able to tailor that out, that disaster recovery plan and all the rest of that needs to go up front. And even in the system architecture, once again, you need the right people in the room. You need people from customer service, you need people from the enrolment, you need people from teaching and learning departments clearly, but the right IT people at the room and a co-sharing of the lead. It's not an IT lead and it shouldn't be an individual teaching and learning lead. It needs to be a real strong partnership. And then making sure you've got an advocate at executive level, because too often it becomes a system that doesn't seem to have a friend at its highest level, even though I would say it would be the second most important system in any teaching and learning organisation, behind the SMS. But the LMS is almost equally as important, but rarely gets the same money and the same priority. So before you take it on, you need to make sure you've got an executive who's willing to support that. This is the part that's absolutely my big thing. If you actually plan out, number one, your learning architecture in an appropriate way up front, even if you have an existing one, this will save you an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort, not just from a quality viewpoint, but from a product design and development, a student experience point of view. Everything will sort of come together. And I've put a rather sad little image there on the right-hand side. We call this a learning design guide for every project we work on. We have all the assessment templates, all the learning design templates, all the review templates, the survey, everything is done before we start. However, what it has to do is thread through the pedagogical theories, the unique differentiators that you actually want to embed within. Are you going to have simulations for a see, practice, do model? Are you going to have a huge amount of video? Are you going to embed some really nice little AI tools? What are you going to do? What is your philosophy? What is your approach? Which then can be consistently applied across all of your product as it comes forward and customized depending on whether it's a micro-credential, a short course, accredited course, or a higher education course. So making sure that once you've got that andragogical approach really clearly in your mind, are you doing project-based learning? Are you doing inquiry-based learning? Are you thinking about cognitive load? Have you designed out constructive alignment for your learning designers to follow? You then need to start to think about how that plays out in your LMS. So what does a landing page look like? How does it reflect your end cohort? Not just your students, but your teachers and your executives, which will all have data that they need to pull out at the end, which makes a massive difference. Have you designed your icons and interactivities and H5P activities to reflect the andragogical approach? Have you designed all your templates that clearly show through that pedagogical approach and the vision of what your company is aiming to achieve? And have you designed the student engagement and evaluation process, preferably with some real live students who can tell you what they really want? Because I can tell you the things I've learned over the last 20 years has been that often I think the most amazing things are going to be great. One time I remember with one company, I wanted to do a 3D interface and the students all went, nah, we just want really simple stuff, my friend. And they listed off like 5 things. We want to get our timetables, our results, our assessments. You know, they were far more sensible than I ever was. Then we move on to product design and development. So once you've got your infrastructure model and your scaffold actually designed, it becomes quite simplistic then, or not simplistic, it's simpler to actually take your teachers who are going to be designers in this through a journey around either retrofitting existing product or designing new product. And you need to understand the absolute depths of the product suite and build a taxonomy. Make sure you're really clear on how you design those courses, how you design your assessments. What's it going to look like? Is it, once again, following the vision of the organisation? Then you need to design a system that can accommodate multiple types of enrolments, because you know, there's so many different requirements for different types of students, and often we force our micro-credential students through the most onerous and challenging enrolment processes and onboarding processes for the LMS they don't really need to do. So start to build out your personas before you even start. Ensure your system can integrate to a virtual learning environment in some shape, way or form. And map your plugins. Map your plugins really early, because I can tell you I've been brought to my knees on more than one occasion by trying to get a virtual classroom in. Something really simple that you thought would be a shoo-in. Integrate your LLN or your ACER or your LLN robot. Trying to get that integrated can sometimes be a 3-month journey in a large organisation, or you mightn't have the capability in-house to do it for a smaller organisation. Map out your plugins really early and put it as an adjunct in your system architecture. Your data architecture, I am an absolute lover of data. And the reason I say this is that, once again, I learned the hard way, data talks. No matter how passionate, inspiring, and all the data I bring to the executive, it's not going to work unless I have hard facts. And the moment I could start to use data to show how it impacted on student experience, student retention rates, professional development accrual levels, improvement in quality, breadth of product, once I could pull that data out and say at week 6, we have got 30% of students who haven't engaged for 5 days, we could pull that data out and give it to the teachers, or they could self-access it, give it to the coordinators, give it to the managers, give it to the directors. You know, if you're in a small organisation, straight up to the CEO, you've got hard facts and data. That's a great outcome. Second thing that the data can do is it can actually show you failure points in the students' learning. It could be that multiple students are not completing a task because it's too hard, it's not engaging, or it's just too confusing. The third thing it will give you is where the students revel, that they absolutely love certain types of activities. It's a lesson in learning design and student experience and student engagement that you really need to listen to. We certainly learned some lessons years ago when I was working at Swinburne. We had a video conferencing system that recorded all the lectures. Through data, we were able to work out very quickly, and I know this is a no-brainer, but we worked it out very quickly. The students would watch the first 8 minutes, and they would watch probably the last 5 minutes, and they would sample in the middle. It didn't take us long to discover that lecturers always talked about assessments and what was going to be discussed in the first part and the end part, and students aren't silly. They'll do a critical path analysis, and they'll work through exactly what they need to learn at a given time. And so we learned out very quickly that now we can use AI tools that will do a summary of the key salient points within video, which is brilliant. Back then, there was none of that. So you'd have to do shortcuts to let them know where the key learning points were, because they weren't going to sit there and watch a video effectively, no matter how exciting and enticing the lecturers were, for 45 minutes. It just wasn't going to happen. So picking up those key learning points was really critical. Pulling that data out and doing something with it is really critical. I have been asked the question, and quite rightly asked the question, aren't the existing reports okay? Well, some of them are. But quite frankly, when you do your data architecture and you talk to your executive, you talk to your teaching coordinators, your teachers and the students, one of the most powerful bit of data is to give students the information that they need. What do you need to do to pass? What aren't you passing? Cutting through. This generation has no time to wait. They want to be autonomous and capable of leading their own journey and identifying what the challenges are. So really interesting. So once you've got all those plans together, now you can touch the actual LMS, which sounds a bit strange, but it's worked multiple instances, multiple times. And I can tell you many times that I haven't taken an approach like this. It hasn't worked as well. So let's talk a bit about some of the operational issues, down to the, so things that are really critical, the development of suitable naming conventions. It sounds like a bit twee, but it's really important to make sure you almost have a glossary of terms and a consistency of approach for how you call things. Now, if any of you have worked in Desire to Learn, Catalyst, Moodle, you name it, the list goes on. They all have different names for different protocols within a learning management system. You do not need to follow those. You need to be really clear on what your approach is and the use of the language within it. Now, what are you calling assessment tasks, tools, packs? What are they? What is the language that you're going to use so the student experience is consistent across every single unit or every single subject or every single micro-credential? Try not to, not updating your CSS to align with versions. It sounds real, but it can cause massive problems if it's not done at least on a biannual or annual basis, because you end up with a whole lot of legacy items that will break, which will cause more and more problems. And I'd also add that some of my teams in the past would have said, don't do too many customizations to the Moodle, because you're forever going to be uploading, upgrading, redoing. Where you can get away with using the current system uses, use them. Copyright and plagiarism, a problem, a challenge, an opportunity. And particularly as we move into the era of AI and we move into all of the challenges around people protecting their intellectual property and their visuals, there needs to be a policy or a discussion, not just on copyright and plagiarism, but also how you're going to handle AI. Do you see it as a contemporary skill that all students need to learn, which I would agree? Do they need to understand curation of content, understand what deep fakes are? Do they need to understand appropriate attribution of using AI? How are you going to handle that? It's here, it's now, and it's happening. Too many administrators. Every place I've ever worked in, everybody wants to be an administrator. No one wants to be a teacher or a student. They all want complete power. Well, not everybody, but there's always a few. work out your protocols up front around what are the rights of each level within the organisation, what they can and can't do. And modifying the core to make custom changes I've mentioned before, because the maintenance required, if it's one person sitting in a team, you don't want to do too many customisations. Forecasting the future, I haven't gone too big here. I've kept it pretty simple. My business is around jobs for the future and skills for the future, but I thought let's just keep it sort of fairly structured. One of the things that I think is the most telling is that if any of you follow Moodle as a learning management system, Martin Dougliamas has recently stepped down as the CEO, but he's now moved into a role of the CPO. So he is actually doing research, pilots all around how AI can be better embedded within a learning management system. Martin is an incredible scientist and educator. If you've got people throughout this business actually starting to look at exponential change in this space, it's best to pay attention. And that's the nice thing I can talk about Moodle. I know Catalyst has moved a long way in this space. Some of the key themes I see that are really, if you're looking for a partner or you've currently got a partner, are they looking at central themes around personalisation, AI and machine learning? Are they looking at how these algorithms can improve the quality of the data you get and do some of the data synthesis for you so that you're not trolling through these numbers trying to find patterns in them? I think content recommendations, assessment and pacing around individual needs. We've been talking about personalised learning for 20 years. This is the first time I can honestly see we're going to bite the bullet and things are going to start to happen. Over the last year, my company and my partners have been exploring and doing a lot of work in AI. I shout out to Pop Education. Phenomenal stuff around being able to actually build content, build assessment tools, build lesson plans, do a whole range of things. As long as you know how to curate your content and check it, absolutely power in there. So I'd say the three big call out themes is AI and machine learning. And I think it's going to be an absolute gift and transformational for VET, particularly around application of knowledge and being able to data mine for stuff that's really relevant to our students wanting a strong vocational outcome. I'd say mixed reality and simulations as we start to really try to practice, those things that come out really critical. And gamification and personalised learning is more real than it's ever been. And I think if we can get on the front foot and do a whole lot of PD and a whole lot of exploration, we've got some really great opportunities to transform our product into being something that has traditionally been text-based into something that is going to sing and be far more relevant to this new generation of students. So that's me. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Pauline, and also Ellen, for those invaluable insights there. And also for sharing how eWorks have helped you in, achieving your learners and organizations' goals and needs. In summary, I guess we are in agreement that there is no perfect LMS, but we can definitely establish an effective learning management system by avoiding or bearing in mind those mistakes that will impact our LMS operations. So thanks also to all our participants. I'm mindful of the time. It's nearly 2:45, and we hope that you got some takeaways from today's webinar. We would also love to hear your feedback. So I'll pop in the link into the chat box. Just bear with me. Oop. And please feel free to put any suggestions, any feedback, so we can improve our future webinars.
Janelle, and can I just say, if anybody's got any questions or comments for Ellen or myself, please pop them in the webinar chat, and we're happy to follow them up with you. Well, I know I personally am, Ellen. I can't speak for you. I'm sure you would.
No, definitely. It's fine.
Yeah, we'd love to continue a dialogue, and we're happy to have that discussion. So
beautiful. And I think we are putting in our contact details on the screen as well, so that anyone who has any questions or clarifications, just feel free to pop them up on our BD team's email address, and then if they've got any questions for Ellen or Pauline, we can just pop them through to your email addresses. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Also, our next webinar will be on the 21st of March, 2 p.m. That will be a Thursday. The topic will be content creation strategies. Email will follow for more details. Thank you again, everyone, for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again, Pauline and Ellen. Really appreciate it.